The night I was rejected, even the crescent moon refused to look at me. Clouds smothered the sky above House Theron's stone courtyard, turning it into a low, bruised ceiling. Torches hissed and spat, their flames tossing jittery light over black marble walls and the ring of gathered shifters. Vampiric hearts thudded all around me, scents of iron, wine, and smoke filling the air like a storm about to break. I knelt on the cold dais, alone. An omega on display. My wrists were bare, unadorned. My bondmark, though, could not be hidden. It glowed faintly at the side of my neck, a small crescent of pale light threaded with tiny starbursts, as if someone had pressed falling stars into my skin. It had always marked me as strange. Tonight, it would mark me as something worse. By law and bloodline, boomed Elder Varric, his voice echoing from the tower stones. We gather under the moon goddess to seal the fated bond between Alpha Dalos of House Theron and Omega Alirae of the same bloodline. Before Pack Council, before Kingdom, before Destiny itself. The crowd quieted. Only the wind whispered over the battlements. Somewhere far off, a lone wolf form howled from the mountain ridge, a note of wild sound that made my chest ache. This was supposed to be the night my life began. I had imagined it so many times. Dalos stepping down from the throne steps, silver eyes warm, scent wrapping me in cedar and smoke. Our hands joined. The moon goddess blessing us, bondmark flaring. Me, no longer just an omega scraping by at the edges of the pack, but Luna to be of House Theron. Instead, Dalos stood above me like a stranger. Tall, dark hair pulled back with silver rings, shoulders draped in the alpha mantle of our house. His gaze swept the crowd, cold and sharp, avoiding mine as if I were a stain he didn't want to see. Power rolled off him in steady waves. My omega senses flinched, instinctively trying to fold in on themselves. Dalos, Elder Varric prompted. By ancient law and the will of the moon goddess, do you accept this omega as your mate? Do you claim Alirae by bond and mark, before pack and kingdom? I lifted my head, just enough to see his face. Once, those silver eyes had softened when they found me in the orchard shadows. Once, his hands had shaken when he touched my hair and whispered of futures. Now, something like fear flickered there, quickly smothered under icy disdain. I do not, he said. The words dropped like a stone into silence. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Not the flames, not the banners, not the breath in my lungs. Then the courtyard erupted. Gasps, hisses, a ragged chorus of disbelief. Elder Varric straightened slowly. Alpha Dalos, repeat your answer. Before Pack Council. Before the moon goddess. I refuse this bond, Dalos said, louder now, his voice carrying to every corner. I reject this omega. Her bond mark is wrong. Tainted. The seers warned us. Those stars mean omen, not Luna. I will not bind my bloodline to a curse. Tainted. I felt the words sink into me like a blade. My bond mark burned, then flickered, as if some invisible thread had snapped. The faint, constant pull that had always tugged me toward Dalos went dark, leaving a hollow ache deep in my chest. It was more than humiliation, it felt like someone had reached in and wrenched destiny itself out of my ribs. By law, one counselor muttered, a rejected omega may be reassigned. Who would take her? Another cut in. Look at that mark. Eyes pierced me from all sides. Some held pity, others disgust, others the sharp gleam of worry, because if an omen walked among them, it might drag misfortune behind. Under the shrouded sky, the crescent moon did not break through. Alirae of House Theron. Elder Varric said at last, each word heavy. By decree of Pack Council, and in the absence of any willing mate claim, you are exiled from this house. Until the moon goddess reveals your true destiny, you belong to no pack, no alpha, and no throne. The crowd's murmur swelled. I knelt there, heartbeat roaring in my ears, trying to understand how a future could simply vanish. I had always thought rejection would mean heartbreak. I had not understood that it could also mean becoming no one at all. As the guards led me away, the first cold drops of rain began to fall. I tilted my face up on instinct, seeking the moon, the stars, anything. Clouds swallowed the heavens. I walked out of house therein believing my story ended there. I was wrong. Somewhere beyond the valley, in a citadel carved from night itself, a vampire alpha king stirred on his obsidian throne, because prophecy had just shifted, and my cursed bondmark was its hinge. Dawn in exile had a taste, smoke, frost, and something bitter I couldn't quite name. The gates of house therein closed behind me with a final, grinding thud. No escort. No crest on my cloak. No scent beside my own to anchor me. For the first time since childhood, I walked the mountain path as if the ground beneath my boots might give way at any moment. The fortress receded, a dark shape against the whitening sky. Banners limp. Watchtowers silent. I waited, foolishly, for someone to call my name. Alirae, wait, this was a mistake, come back. Only the wind answered, slipping sharp fingers under my hood. I kept walking. Pines crowded the path, tall and black, their needles jeweled with frost. The scent of them cut through the numbness, resin and cold earth, memories of sneaking out under the crescent moon when I was still young enough to believe the moon goddess whispered directly to me. Back then, my strange bondmark had felt like a secret blessing. Now it felt like a brand. Rejection was supposed to sever the mate bond cleanly. Instead, mine felt torn, raw edges scraping against my ribs. Every distant sound, every flicker of movement made some stubborn part of me brace for Dallow's presence. He did not come. By mid-morning, I reached the valley crossroads. Two roads met there, one leading down into the lowland villages where lesser packs huddled together for warmth and safety, the other angling upward along the mountains, toward the royal road and the distant citadel glinting faintly on the horizon. Between them stood an old shrine. A single stone column, pitted and cracked, with a crescent moon carved into its face. Moss crawled up its base. Someone had once left offerings here, dried flowers, a little silver pendant in the shape of a wolf, a smear of darkened blood. I stopped. My legs trembled from more than the climb. All the anger I should have felt at Dallow's, at house therein, at the pack council, festered instead into something hollower. A quiet, grey emptiness. Broken, lonely, unmoored. An omega with a bond mark that made even elders whisper. Slowly, I sank to my knees in front of the shrine. Stones bit into my skin through my thin leggings. I pressed my fingers to the carved crescent and felt grit and cold leach into my bones. Moon goddess, I whispered, voice catching. If you ever listened to me at all, was this what you meant? Is this what my mark is for? To be cast out? To be a warning? Silence. A raven croaked somewhere high in the pine canopy. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sense of smoke from distant villages, snow on higher peaks, and something else, thin as a thread, sharp as silver. I lifted my head. Far, far away, beyond the valley, the clouds parted for a moment over the mountains. A single spear of pale light struck down, illuminating the distant shape of Caelan, the royal citadel of the vampire king. From where I knelt, it looked like a shard of night stabbed into the sky, its black towers crowned with delicate crescents that flashed in the brief light. It might have been coincidence. It might have been nothing. But I was an omega with nowhere else to go, and my bond mark pulsed once, strangely, as if answering some silent call from that distant throne. You chose this mark. I breathed, fingers digging into the stone. Fine. Then choose where it leads me. The wind gusted. The tiny silver wolf charm at the base of the shrine clinked against stone, tilting toward the road that climbed. The road to the vampire Alpha King. My heart thudded, slow and heavy. The Alpha King was not my Alpha. Not my pack. He ruled the entire kingdom, all bloodlines, all shifter houses. Omegas didn't simply appear at his gates and ask for help. But law said every Omega must be under pack, or under crown. House therein had cast me out. The pack council had washed their hands. That left only one throne left between me and total lawlessness. I stood, picked up my small bag, and wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. Fine, I said to the sky. If destiny won't leave me alone, I'll walk right into its teeth. I took the road that led toward the Vampire King. The royal road felt like walking along a scar cut into the kingdom's spine. It was wider than the narrow pack paths, paved with old, dark stone. Ancient beech trees arched overhead, their pale trunks glowing softly in the half-light, branches weaving a cathedral of bare silver limbs. The air grew thinner and colder as I climbed, the scent of snow threading through each breath. Now and then, ruined watchtowers rose from the hills, gnawed by time, ivy throttling their crumbling stones. Ravens perched on their highest broken teeth, watching me with flat red eyes. Below, in the deep folds of the valley, villages clung to slopes like moss. Clusters of slate roofs and thin chimneys breathing smoke into the sky. Eyes followed me whenever the road dipped near them. A lone omega. No crest on my cloak. No escort. My scent unshielded and obvious. I tugged the fabric tighter around my throat, trying to hide the faint glow of my bondmark. It was foolish. Any alpha with decent senses would smell the unclaimedness on me, the rejection, the raw edges of a severed bond. But still I tried. By the time the sun sagged toward the horizon, shadows pooling long and blue, I reached a bend where the road burst free of the trees. And saw the heart of the kingdom. Caelestis rose from the mountain like it had been carved out of the first night. Black stone walls climbed sheer from the cliffs, inlaid with veins of silver that caught the weakest light. Spires speared the sky, crowned with delicate crescents of pale metal. Torchlight burned along the outer battlements, a necklace of fire encircling the castle. Below, the city of Noctis spilled down the slope in tight spirals, its streets lit with lanterns that glowed like distant stars. I stopped, breath caught halfway in my chest. Power hummed in the air here, not like Dallow's turbulent alpha dominance, but something deeper, older. A thrum through the bones of the mountain itself. The kingdom's blood, pulsing toward its throne. "What am I doing?" I whispered. As if in answer, the wind brought a new scent to me, leather, steel, horse sweat, and the sharp, undeniable tang of many powerful vampires moving together. Hoofbeats followed, pounding along the stone. I barely had time to scramble to the side of the road before they appeared, a column of riders cresting the curve, cloaks streaming, armor drinking up the fading light. Their horses were large, black or deep bay, breath steaming in the cold. Each rider wore the royal sigil, a crescent moon crowned with a spray of stars, over their breastplate. The night guard. My heart pitched into an uneven rhythm. Instinct whispered, "Bow your head, make yourself small, don't draw an alpha's eye." I obeyed, stepping down off the road, pressing my back against an old beech, gaze fixed on the dirt. Maybe they'd pass without noticing the stray omega hugging the tree roots. The first riders thundered by in a blur of sound and shadow. Then a voice, low and commanding, cut through the drum of hooves. "Hold!" The word hit the air like law. Horses shuddered to a halt. Leather creaked. The world shrank to my ragged breathing and the thunder in my veins. A presence detached itself from the group, a weight of power that pressed against my skin, prickling at my bondmark until it flared hot beneath my collar. Boots hit the ground. Every instinct I had screamed alpha. "Look at me," the voice said. Not shouted. Not harsh. But it carried a quiet authority that made my bones want to obey. The kind of voice that had decided borders, sentences, futures. Slowly, bracing myself with a hand against the tree, I lifted my head. He stood a few paces away, framed by the darkening sky and the line of his guard. The vampire Alpha King. Caelan looked exactly nothing like the distant figure I'd imagined hearing stories at the hearth fire. He was not some faceless monster on a far-off throne. He was very, very real. Taller than Dallows, broad-shouldered beneath black steel and supple leather engraved with crescent moons and stars. A fur mantle spilled from his pauldrons, dark as raven wings. Several thin scars edged his jaw and throat, pale lines against warm golden-brown skin, like whispers of battles survived. But it was his eyes that rooted me. Silver, yes, but not empty. Depth lived in them, layered with patience, with exhaustion, with a razor-sharp intelligence that missed nothing. When his gaze met mine, the world narrowed to 2 points, his eyes, and the steady burn of my bondmark. "What is your name?" he asked. "Alirae," I said, surprised that sound came out at all. "Omega of no house any longer, your majesty." A murmur flickered through the riders behind him. "Of no house," Caelan repeated softly. His gaze dropped to the side of my neck, even though my cloak hid the mark. "And yet clearly Omega. You know the law, Alirae. No Omega travels the royal road alone, unclaimed and unescorted. Where is your pack?" "Behind me," I said, and hated how my voice shook. "House therein. They rejected the bond. Exiled me before dawn. There was no time to petition the Pack Council for new protection, or to seek lunar registry." Something dark flashed across his face at the word rejected. Not pity. Not quite anger either. Recognition? "Therein," one of the captains said behind him. "We passed their courier this morning, my king. They ride to Caelestis to report on the blood moon preparations." Blood moon. The next auspicious night in the kingdom's cycle, when crimson light would stain the sky and old magic would stir in the bones of every shifter. House Theron would be there, standing tall in their finery, Dallas among them. Talking about me, no doubt. Caelan's jaw tightened. "And in their haste to prepare for the blood moon," he said dryly, "they abandoned an Omega on my road." I wanted to tell him I wasn't anyone worth his notice. I wanted to fade backward into the trees and keep walking until the kingdom ended. Instead, my bondmark throbbed again, a slow, insistent pulse beneath my skin, as if it had its own opinion. A crease formed between his brows. "Your mark," he said. "I can feel it from here." I swallowed. "They say it's tainted, my king." "You don't want to see it." For a moment, something like amusement softened the edges of his mouth. It didn't reach his eyes, but it took some of the sharpness out of his features. "Alirae," he said, and the way he shaped my name made my breath hitch. "I am the Alpha King of this kingdom. I have seen every kind of mark the moon goddess has ever burned into our bloodlines." "Show me." The riders shifted, uneasy. One began. "Your Majesty, if she is truly the omen." He lifted a hand. Silence fell like a cloak. Slowly, with fingers that wouldn't quite stop shaking, I reached up and tugged my cloak aside, baring the side of my neck. Cold air kissed the skin there. Then his gaze did. The crescent glowed softly, pale light pulsing with my heartbeat. The fine starbursts threaded through it shimmered like they were trying to answer some distant call in the sky. In the dimming light, the mark looked almost alive. For the first time, I watched someone powerful truly see it. Caelan went still. "By the moon," one of the riders breathed. "It's exactly as the seers described." Prophecy. The word hovered just beyond hearing, carrying a weight I wasn't ready to touch. "How many know?" the king asked quietly, his eyes never leaving my mark. "House therein," I said, throat tight. "Their pack council. Elder Varek. They called it cursed. They said stars don't belong in a moon-blessed mark. Stars and moon together," he murmured. "The crescent of the lost prophecy. The omen of the falling stars." I stared at him. "Prophecy?" He exhaled slowly, as if weighing choices. Then the vampire Alpha King, whose word could reshape law and destiny for every pack in the kingdom, made one. "Alirae, Omega of no house," he said, his voice ringing with quiet command. "By authority of the crown and in the sight of the moon goddess, I claim you under royal protection. You will come to Caelestis. Your fate will not be left in the hands of cowards who fear what they do not understand." "Claim you?" My bruised heart flinched at the words, remembering another claim that had never come. But this was different, no false warmth, no promises. Just a decree, hard and clean, like iron laid over a wound. I bowed my head, because what else could I do? "Yes, your majesty," I whispered. He turned to his guard. Make space. She rides with us. And just like that, the girl who had been rejected and left alone hours before stepped onto the path that led straight to the Vampire King's throne, and the prophecy etched in the falling stars buried beneath her skin. Riding with the night guard felt like being swallowed by a moving shadow. They set me on a spare horse between two riders, tightening the saddle straps and adjusting the stirrups with brisk efficiency. No one spoke directly to me, but I felt their gazes flicking over, sharp with curiosity and something more wary. The horse beneath me was a big, patient bay with a white star on its forehead. It smelled of clean sweat and hay, its steady heartbeat a quiet drum through the leather. I stroked its neck once, grateful for something solid that did not look at me like an omen. When the column moved, it did so as one living thing, hooves striking stone in a thunder of iron, cloaks snapping, armor chiming softly. The road climbed, looping around the mountain's flank. To our right, cliffs dropped away into a blue-gray abyss. To our left, the rock rose sheer, veined with pale quartz that caught the last light. Ahead, Caelestis grew. Up close, the citadel's walls were even more daunting, stone older than any pack house, polished smooth by centuries of wind and magic. Lacework balconies jutted out at dizzying heights. Great silver chains hung between towers, draped in banners that bore the crescent and stars of the royal bloodline. As we approached the city, the air changed. Scents multiplied, hundreds, thousands of vampires, their bloodlines weaving into a tapestry of iron, cedar, spice, ice, and smoke. The city gates yawned open, and we poured inside. Noctis was not like the quiet valley villages. Narrow streets climbed and curved, spiraling around the mountain's heart. Houses leaned together, their slate roofs almost touching, lanterns glowing warm and golden under the spreading dark. Market stalls were closing, vendors stacking crates of glass vials and dried herbs and strange fruits from southern lands. Children darted between legs, their faintly glowing eyes following the king as he rode by. They bowed, or dropped to one knee, or simply pressed their hands to their hearts, baring their throats for a heartbeat in a gesture of trust. Caelan acknowledged them with small nods, never once slowing, never once allowing his focus to fully leave the path ahead. I watched him from behind, from the hollow of the guard formation. The way he sat his horse, relaxed but ready. The way his head tilted now and then, listening to things too faint for my ears. The subtle flares and fades of his scent, stormwind, cold iron, the faint copper of old blood. It whispered alpha in every line. My omega instincts didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to curl inward, to keep my distance. Another, softer part, recognized something. Not mate, exactly. Not the sharp, insistent tug I'd felt with Dalos. This was different. Older. Like the deep pull of the tide on the moon. We climbed through the city, past the moonlit courtyard where acolytes in silver robes lit candles to the moon goddess, past the training yard where warriors in half-armor sparred under the watchful eyes of captains, past the terrace garden where pale flowers glowed faintly in the dark. Finally, we reached the inner gates. They were black opal, inlaid with a vast crescent, and a spray of tiny stars almost identical to those threaded through my skin. For a moment my bondmark answered. Heat sparking under my collarbone, a strange flutter in my chest, as if my body recognized this place. The gates swung inward. We rode into the royal courtyard. It spread wide before the main keep, paved with dark stone veined in silver. A fountain sat at its center, water spilling from a carved moon bowl into a circle of basins. The air was colder here, thinner. Above the keep's tall doors, an enormous window of smoked glass stared down like a watching eye. Dismount, the captain next to me said. My legs were stiff, but I slid down, landing in a crouch to keep from falling. The courtyard smelled of water, stone, and the faint, rich tang of the royal bloodline, a scent like iron and lightning threaded with something sweet. Caelan swung down from his horse in one fluid motion. For a heartbeat, he looked not like a distant king but like any other warrior returning from patrol, tired and alert, unbuckling a gauntlet. Then a robed figure appeared at the top of the stairs, a woman with dark braids and a chain of silver crescents draped across her chest. "Your Majesty," she called, bowing. "The Pack Council awaits in the throne hall. The blood moon preparations have begun early, it seems." Caelan cut in, giving me a brief side glance. "Send word that I will join them shortly. Inform them I'd bring new information." Her gaze slid to me then, sharp and assessing, lingering on the side of my throat where my bondmark tingled even still. Her pupils dilated a fraction. "As the moon goddess wills," she murmured. "Captain Orin," Caelan said, turning to the man beside me. "Escort Omega Alirae to the east wing. Give her one of the empty Omega suites. Assign a guard at her door. She is under royal protection. Spilled blood will answer to me." "Yes, my king." When he said my name this time, I felt it like a warm hand on my shoulder. For a moment, as he turned to go, our eyes met again. The courtyard, the guards, the waiting council, all of it went faint. Just silver and the quiet ache in my chest. "Rest," he said, voice softer now. "You have been through enough for one night." Then he mounted the stairs, cloak whispering behind him, and vanished into the keep. I stood in the heart of the kingdom, in a castle built by prophecy and war, and realized that whatever story I'd been living before had truly ended. This was something else entirely. And it had begun with rejection. The Omega suites in the East Wing were designed for comfort, not grandeur. Captain Orin led me through wide corridors lit by crescent moon sconces. The walls were hung with tapestries showing phases of the moon over the kingdom. Thin crescents, heavy full moons, the ominous red wash of the blood moon. At each turn, guards in dark armor stood at attention, their sense a blend of discipline and barely leashed power. We passed a balcony. I glanced out. From here, Caelestis truly looked like it had been carved from night. The lower terraces shimmered with lanterns. The sky above was peeling back to reveal the first sharp pricks of stars. My bondmark pulsed once, hard, as if some thread had been tugged taut between my skin and those distant lights. "This way," Orin said. He stopped at a door of dark wood carved with a simple crescent. Inside, a small sitting room opened into a bedchamber. It was more than I'd ever had at House Theron. A real bed with deep furs, a hearth, shelves lined with a few old books, a washbasin polished to a shine. The air smelled of lavender and something like vanilla. "Fresh water will be brought," the captain said. "If you require a healer." "I'm not injured," I cut in, then hesitated. "Not physically." He studied me for a second, something kinder than curiosity in his eyes. "The council chambers can wound deeper than any blade," he said quietly. "The king is not blind to that. You are safe here, Alirae. Sleep if you can." He bowed and left, posting a guard outside. For a long time after the doors shut, I simply stood there, listening to the crackle of the empty hearth, the faint trickle of water in the pipes. The silence in my chest was loud. Where Dallow's bond had once burned, only chill emptiness remained. I crossed to the washbasin and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection in the metal surface wavered, pale skin, dark hair tangled from the wind, eyes ringed with shadows. I tilted my head, pulling aside my collar. The mark glowed back at me. Crescent moon, thin and elegant, threaded through with those defiant star points. It should have looked beautiful. All I saw was the symbol that had stripped me of Pack, future name. "Prophecy," I whispered to it, remembering Caelan's words on the road. "Is that what you are? Or just an excuse for people to be afraid of me?" The mark didn't answer. Still, as I watched, one of the tiny starbursts flared a fraction brighter, like a heartbeat. A knock sounded at the door. My shoulders tensed. "Yes?" It opened, and the last person I expected filled the frame. Not Dallows. Not Elder Varek. The vampire Alpha King himself. Caelan had shed most of his armor. Only the black leather underlayers remained, fitting him like a second skin. The fur mantle was gone, leaving his shoulders less imposing but no less powerful. His silver eyes caught the room's soft light, turning it into something sharp and searching. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. I nearly laughed. "You're the Alpha King," I managed. "I don't think that word applies to you." "Perhaps," he said, lips quirking faintly. "But I try not to enter an Omega space without invitation unless there is a threat." Heat crawled up my neck. I stepped back, leaving the door open wider. "There's no threat here, Your Majesty. Just too many thoughts." He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. The room immediately felt smaller. His scent rolled through it, storm air before rain, iron, and something darker. The tiny hairs on my arms lifted. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the chair by the hearth. "Your legs are shaking." I hated that he was right. But I obeyed, lowering myself into the chair. He leaned one shoulder against the wall opposite me, crossing his arms, content to take the less dominant position in the space. It didn't make him any less alpha. "I told the council you arrived," he said. "They were displeased." My fingers tightened in my lap. "I didn't mean to bring trouble to your throne, my king. Prophecy brings trouble whether it's invited or not," he said. "You simply had the misfortune to be born with it etched into your skin." He spoke without cruelty. That somehow made it worse. "Tell me," I said, "this prophecy. Everyone seems to know it except the one who's carrying it." His gaze flicked briefly to my mark, then back to my face. "Centuries ago, when the packs were still tearing each other apart, and the kingdom had no single Alpha King, the seers spoke of a night when stars would fall like rain. On that night, they said, a crescent moon Omega bearing the stars in her bondmark would stand at the side of the throne. If the reigning Alpha King claimed her, bond and mark as mate and Luna, the kingdom would either be united at last, or destroyed from within. A chill slid down my spine. "Either?" I said hoarsely. "That's not very specific." "Prophecies rarely are," he said dryly. "The old pack councils feared it. They feared the idea that one Omega, one bond, could alter all law, all bloodlines. So they carved protections into pack law, rules about who a king may claim, rules about fated mates, rules about blood sharing and bond marks. They tried to make destiny behave. Has this happened before?" I asked. "An Omega like me?" "Never." His voice went quiet. "Until you." The hearth popped, even though no fire was lit. Or maybe that was my heart. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady it. "And what does the council want to do?" I forced out. "With me. With this. Some want you hidden away," Caelan said. "Tucked into a monastery, perhaps. A life of prayer and obedience, safely out of reach of any throne. Like locking a weapon in a chest," I said bitterly. His mouth tightened. "Others think killing you would end the prophecy altogether." I went cold. He watched my reaction like he was weighing it against something unseen. "I will not allow that," he said simply. "I do not know yet what you mean for this kingdom, Alirae. For my bloodline. But I will not spill innocent blood to appease cowards." It was a terrible thing, in that moment, to feel gratitude. "Thank you," I whispered. Silence stretched between us. In it, I became aware of other threads: his steady breathing, the subtle slow thrum of his pulse, the faint tug in my chest that had nothing to do with Dallow's broken bond. "Do you?" I began, then stopped, cheeks burning. He tilted his head. "Ask." "Do you feel anything?" I said, words tumbling now before I could stop them. "When you look at my mark? At me? They say the fated mate bond is instant, that when an alpha sees their Omega, the scent, the pull, it's undeniable. Dallow said he felt nothing. Only fear. Only shame. Is that what you feel when you see me?" For the first time, something like real pain flickered in his eyes. "Your former alpha is a fool," he said, the words low and rough. He pushed off the wall and came closer, slowly, giving me time to flinch, to pull back. I didn't. Every nerve was focused on him, on the way the air shifted with his nearness, carrying that storm scent deeper into my lungs. He crouched to bring his eyes level with mine. Fated bonds are not always fire and thunder the instant eyes meet, he said. Sometimes they are a tide, pulling quietly until you realize the shore beneath you has changed. I do not know what you are to me yet, Alirae. To this throne? But I know this. When you walked onto my road, I felt a piece of the sky turn. My heart stuttered. Is that good? His lips quirked, but his gaze stayed serious. Ask me again under the blood moon, he said. When the stars decide if they will fall. He rose in one fluid motion. Tomorrow, I will present you to the Pack Council, he continued. They will snarl and posture, and I will remind them that law bends before destiny when the moon goddess herself insists. It will not be pleasant. But you will not be alone. He inclined his head, a strange, almost courtly gesture. Rest, Omega, he said. The kingdom will not be settled tonight. After he left, I sat in the quiet room, feeling the echo of his presence in the air. Broken. Lonely. Claimed by no pack, no mate. And yet, for the first time since rejection, something fragile and terrifying stirred in me. Not hope. Not yet. But the faintest belief that maybe, just maybe, I was not a mistake. Sleep didn't come so much as ambush me. One moment I was staring at the ceiling, following the carved crescent pattern over and over until it blurred. The next, my eyes slid shut and the room dissolved into shadow. In the dream, I stood again in the courtyard of House Theron. Only it wasn't rain that fell this time. It was light. Stars poured from a split in the sky, slow and silent, like silver petals drifting down from some torn heaven. They brushed my skin without burning, settled in my hair, gathered along my bondmark until the crescent blazed, every starburst lit. The pack ringed the dais, but they were faceless now, only cloaks and flames and silence. At the top of the steps, Delos watched me. Except his silver eyes were hollow, swallowed by shadow. Behind him, the throne melted into black stone, wider, higher, the royal throne, not a house seat. An obsidian chair in a hall of night. And on that throne sat Caelan. He didn't move. He only watched as the stars gathered, as my mark burned so bright the world washed out. When I looked down, thin lines of light ran from my bond mark across my collarbone, down my arms, into the stone beneath me, like the kingdom itself was being carved with the same sigil. Choose, a voice whispered, everywhere and nowhere. I couldn't tell if it was the moon goddess or something older. When I tried to speak, light flooded my mouth. I woke with a choke sound, heart slamming against my ribs. The room was dark but for the faint glow of embers in the hearth. My pulse thudded in my ears. Sweat cooled on my skin. The bond mark at my neck tingled, not painful, but aware, like a living thing catching its breath after a run. Outside, a bell tolled softly somewhere in the castle. Dawn's first hour. I pushed myself upright, drawing my knees to my chest on the bed. The dream clung to me in fragments. Starlight, the weight of two thrones, that single word, choose. As if I had any choices left. The guard changed outside my door with a low murmur and the soft thud of boots. This wing slept, but the rest of Caelestis never truly did. A throne never closed its eyes, it only waited. I buried my face in my arms and breathed in the faint scents of the Omega suite, lavender, linen, stone. Not House Theron. Not the orchard where Delos had once promised me forever. This was a different world, and I was already entangled in it. By the time another knock came, the room had turned gray-blue with morning light. Alirae? Captain Orin's voice. May I enter? Yes, I said, throat rough. He stepped in, helm in the crook of his arm. His dark hair was tied back, his jaw shadowed with stubble, silver chain of rank glinting at his throat. The king asked me to escort you to the throne hall, he said. The Pack Council convenes within the hour. He wants you present. My stomach folded in on itself. To decide what to do with me. To decide whether they will accept what is already decided. Orin corrected gently. Dress warmly. The hall holds cold even in summer. Prophecy makes the air thin. I almost laughed at that, but it came out closer to a scoff. You sound like one of the seers. I've stood beside this throne long enough to know when the moon goddess is paying attention. He inclined his head. I'll wait outside. When he left, I moved on unsteady legs to the small wardrobe. Someone had already stocked it. Simple gowns in dark colors, soft underthings, a cloak lined with fur. I chose a dress of deep charcoal, plain but well made, and a cloak that clasped at the throat with a small silver crescent. I hesitated before the mirror, fingers hovering over my collar. Let them see, I thought suddenly. Let them look into the face of the omen they're so afraid of. I folded the cloak open, leaving the side of my neck bare. The crescent gleamed faintly, the starbursts within it flickering in time with my pulse. Fine, I whispered to my reflection. Let's go show them what they threw away. Then I squared my shoulders and stepped out to meet the Alpha King's council. The throne hall of Caelestis felt like standing inside the night sky. High arch ceilings soared overhead, painted in deep indigo and scattered with tiny chips of luminous stone that mimicked stars. Tall windows of smoked glass lined the walls, letting in a muted gray light that never quite touched the center of the room. Torches burned in iron sconces shaped like crescent moons, their flames throwing restless shadows. At the far end, on a raised dais of obsidian, sat the throne. It was carved from a single block of black stone veined faintly with silver, its back rising like a crescent moon turned on its side. A spray of stars fanned above it, each point a sliver of pale metal. It was beautiful, and terrible, and very clearly not meant for comfort. Caelan sat there now. He wore his formal armor, black steel polished until it swallowed light, leather worked with lunar sigils, his mantle of dark fur draped over his shoulders. A circlet of silver rested low on his brow, simple and unadorned. He looked less like a man and more like the embodiment of law itself. To either side of the hall, long tables curved in a crescent, occupied by the pack council. Alphas and elders from the major houses. Their scents braided into a dense weave of power, pine and smoke, frost and iron, wine and ash. House banners hung behind them, wolf forms, moons, sigils of bloodlines centuries old. House Theron's standard snapped faintly in a draught to my left. Dallos sat beneath it. His eyes flicked to me as Orin led me forward, that same sheen of fear turned contempt hard in them. He looked well rested. Composed. As if last night's rejection had cost him nothing. A low murmur rippled through the hall as I walked the long strip of dark carpet toward the dais. I felt every gaze track the exposed curve of my neck. The urge to hunch my shoulders, to hide, clawed at me. I forced myself to keep my chin level. Caelan watched me, expression unreadable. Alirae of Theron, the herald intoned. Omega, bearer of the star-touched crescent. Brought before the council under the protection of the crown. I stopped at the base of the steps, heart pounding. Caelan's silver eyes met mine for a brief, steadying second. Then he turned to the council. Honored Alphas, elders of the Pack Council, he said, voice carrying easily to every corner. You already know why we convene. House Theron sent word this morning of a rejected bond and the exile of an Omega they claim as cursed. Last night, I found that same Omega abandoned on the Royal Road. Murmurs, sharper this time. Someone hissed, "Lawless," under their breath. Caelan's gaze sharpened. You all know the law, he continued. No Omega is to be left unprotected, by pack or by crown. Theron has failed their duty. I have invoked mine. Dallos stiffened. Your Majesty, he said, rising to his feet. With respect, House Theron acted within our rights. The bond was rejected in formal council. The Omega carries a mark our seers declared an omen. We removed a potential threat from our bloodline. A potential threat, Caelan repeated, the words tasting like iron. By casting her out alone to whatever fate found her. She could have sought lunar registry with another house, one elder said, adjusting the rings on his fingers. Or the monasteries? Within hours? Caelan's voice cooled. Before dawn? You gave her no escort, no formal writ, no chance. Do not insult this hall with half-truths, elder. Heat crawled up my neck. Being argued over like an object wasn't new, but having someone argue in my defense was. Dallow's jaw worked. With respect, my king, you are too close to this. The prophecy. Ah. Caelan's gaze swung fully to him. Yes. Let us speak of the prophecy you were so eager to discard when it no longer suited your ambitions. A ripple of unease moved through the tables. An older woman with hair like spun silver cleared her throat. Your Majesty, perhaps we should first confirm. The mark is as the seers foresaw? Caelan inclined his head toward me. Alirae, he said, voice less sharp now. If you will. My hand shook, but I lifted my chin and turned slightly, exposing my neck fully to the hall. The hush was immediate. The mark glowed, brighter than it had in the Omega suite. The crescent shone clear against my skin, each tiny starburst threaded through it shimmering as if catching light from some unseen source above. In that moment, I didn't feel like a girl standing in a hall. I felt like a fulfilled threat. In the flesh, Caelan said quietly. The crescent of the falling stars. The moon goddess has finally delivered the Omega your seers have spent generations pretending they wanted. And now that she stands before you, you flinch. This mark, one elder said slowly, means the kingdom will either be united or destroyed, depending on the choices of the Alpha King who claims her. Another added, eyes sharp. That is the part your Majesty failed to emphasize. A low, humorless sound escaped Caelan. I am well aware of the stakes inscribed on my bloodline, he said. What I will not allow is fear twisting prophecy into justification for murder. Elder Varek, my own council elder, rose, hands spread placatingly. No one here has spoken of killing the girl, my king, he said. Not yet, Caelan said. But we all know the whispers. End the prophecy before it begins. Spill the blood before the stars can fall. Remove the moon goddess piece from the board. The words scraped along my nerves. The room seemed suddenly devoid of air. To do so, Caelan went on, would be to spit in the face of the very power that gave us bondmarks, fated mates, wolf form, and throne. I will not sanction blasphemy dressed as prudence. A middle-aged alpha with a jagged scar along his cheek leaned forward. What, then, does your Majesty propose? He asked. Keep her at your side? Let rumors spread that the Alpha King is tempted by the Omega of prophecy? Our enemies among the rival packs will smell weakness. The rival alphas already question the balance between crown and council. One wrong move, and blood could spill from here to the southern borders. Caelan's gaze flicked briefly to me before returning to the tables. I propose we respect the moon goddess enough to admit we do not yet know her full intention, he said. Until we do, Alirae remains under my protection. No house may lay claim to her. No sentence may be passed that I do not agree to. We will convene again under the crescent moon in 3 nights. The seers will read the skies. Then we will decide how to live with what we have been given. And if the readings say she must die? Another voice asked softly. Silence dropped like a stone. Caelan's eyes went very, very cold. Then we will question whether we are listening to the moon goddess, he said, or to our own fear. For the first time, I understood why the throne was feared, and not just revered. He was not infallible, not gentle, but he was immovable when he chose to be. Until the crescent moon, he said, rising. You have your orders. Spread no rumors, stir no panic. And remember, harm done to the Omega under my protection is harm done to me. The council at least pretended to bow. As they rose and rustling rose, as banners shifted and scents stirred, Dallow's gaze found mine again. For a heartbeat, something flickered there, regret maybe. Or anger that had nowhere to go. Then he turned away. Caelan stepped down from the dais, his cloak whispering behind him. As he passed me, His hand brushed the back of mine, so lightly I might have imagined it. "Breathe," he murmured, so low only I could hear. "You stood before them and did not break. That is more than most alphas manage." I didn't feel unbroken. But I inhaled anyway, drawing his storm scent deeper into my lungs, anchoring myself in this moment where, against all expectation, I was still alive. 3 nights until the crescent moon. 3 nights until the next judgment. The stars above the painted ceiling seemed to watch, waiting. By the time the throne hall emptied, my body felt more like glass than flesh. Every sound scratched along my nerves, the clank of armor, the scrape of chairs, the murmur of layered voices. Captain Orin reappeared at my side, a solid presence in a room that felt like it might tilt under my feet. "Well done," he said quietly. "You didn't faint." "That was an option," I muttered. He huffed something that wasn't quite a laugh. "The last alpha heir we brought before the council to be chastised for breaking law emptied his stomach on those very stones." "That's comforting," I said weakly. Orin guided me out through a side door, away from the main rush of counselors. We emerged into a narrower corridor lit with softer lanterns. The air here held fewer scents: stone, wax, a distant hint of incense. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The king asked that you be brought to the upper terrace," Orin said. "He'll join you once he's finished reminding certain alphas what loyalty means." I pictured Caelan in some adjoining chamber, voice low and cutting, reminding men twice my size that law bent under his will. Some small, treacherous part of me felt safer knowing he was angry on my behalf. The upper terrace was a long, open gallery that overlooked the inner courtyards. White stone columns held up the roof, their tops carved into crescent moons. The balustrade was etched with phases of the moon, a slow shift from dark to light and back again. Beyond it, the city of Noctis sprawled down the mountain, roofs glinting in the midday glow. Orin left me with a bow and a promise that guards were stationed at either end of the gallery. I drifted to the railing, fingers tracing the carved arcs. From here, Caelestis felt less like a fortress and more like a heart. I could see training yards below, a cluster of acolytes crossing the temple courtyard with armfuls of candles, a line of children chasing each other across a garden. Life, even with prophecy coiling like smoke around its edges. A gust of wind lifted the hair at my neck. My bondmark prickled. "You held yourself well," Caelan's voice said from behind me. I turned. He had removed his circlet and loosened the top of his leather collar. The formal armor remained, but he looked more like the man from my room last night than the carved figure on the throne. "I felt like a deer on a butcher's block," I said honestly. "Most who stand before the council do." He joined me at the railing, leaving a respectful distance between us. Still, his presence filled the terrace, pressing against my senses. "The difference is that you were never meant to be meat. That's not how they see it." I gazed down at the courtyard where House Theron's banner fluttered. Gallows and his retinue crossed below like ants, small and distant. To them, I'm a misfired arrow. Easier to snap in half than to admit the archer aimed wrong. His jaw tightened briefly. Dallow's fear is louder than his courage. That is his curse to bear. Not yours. We stood in silence for a few breaths. The wind brought the scents of the city, baking bread, wood smoke, the faint metallic tang of the river that wound far below. "How long have you been king?" I asked suddenly. His lips curved in something wry. "Long enough that I remember when some of those counselors still chased each other through the training yards with wooden swords," he said. "Not so long that I've forgotten what it means to be young and furious at a world that feels rigged against you." "Is it?" I asked. "Rigged?" "Sometimes," he said. "But sometimes the moon goddess leaves cracks in the rules. Little fractures where light can slip through." His gaze slid to my mark. "You appear to be one of them." I swallowed. "That's a poetic way to describe being hunted by prophecy." He turned fully then, resting one forearm on the railing, facing me. Up close like this, the pale scar along his jaw looked almost like a crescent itself, curving just shy of his mouth. I will not lie to you, he said. Your presence here complicates everything. Pack council politics. Law. My own plans for the kingdom. I should apologize, I said reflexively. Don't. The word came quick, sharper than he likely intended. His gaze softened a fraction. You did not ask for this. The blame lies with the powers that etched those stars into your skin, and with the men who feared them so much they were willing to throw you away. I looked out over Noctis again. What were your plans? Before I walked onto your road. He was quiet for a moment. To hold the balance, he said finally. To keep the rival alphas from tearing each other apart long enough that the next generation might know peace. To find an heir worthy of this throne who would not be corrupted by it. To die knowing I had left the kingdom better than I found it. And now? I asked, pulse hitching for reasons that had nothing to do with politics. No, he said slowly. I must ask whether peace was ever truly possible without the change you represent. His silver eyes caught mine, steady and searching. The old ways are cracking, Alirae. Your mark is simply where the fracture lines show. I should have been terrified. But standing there, with the city spread below us and the wind cold on my skin, I felt something else. Like standing on the edge of a cliff, yes, but also like the moment before a leap, when gravity has not yet claimed you and anything is still possible. If the council decides, I forced the words out. If they push for my death under the crescent moon, I will not allow it, he said. You can't promise that, I whispered. Even a king bends to something. If the moon goddess. His hand moved before I realized he'd reached for me. Fingers brushed my wrist, briefly, the barest contact. But heat flared there, nothing like Dallow's touch had ever been. It wasn't a mate bond spark, not yet. It was recognition. A tide shifting direction. I do not know what the moon goddess wants, he said softly. But I know this. I was given this throne for a reason. I will not dishonor it by allowing fear to rule in my name. My throat closed around words that wouldn't come. He let my wrist go, leaving the ghost of warmth behind. Use these 3 days, he said, straightening. Walk the castle. Learn its corners. Meet the people who live in the shadow of this throne. This kingdom is as much theirs as it is mine. And if it becomes mine? I asked, the question trembling out of me before I could stop it. His eyes darkened, some emotion flickering too fast to name. Then, he said, we will face that together. He left me on the terrace with my heart rattling in my chest and the city spread like a question below. 3 days. A crescent moon. And somewhere between them, a choice waiting to be made. Exploring a royal citadel, while under a prophecy-sized shadow was strange. Every hallway felt like it might be important. Every face could be a future ally. Or someone who would vote quietly for my death while smiling across the dinner table. Still, doing something was better than sitting in the Omega suite counting my own breaths. So I walked. Guarded, yes. Orin insisted a member of the night guard trail me at all times, discreet but visible. The one assigned that afternoon was a woman named Nissa, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and a scar through one eyebrow that only made her look more amused by everything. Never thought I'd be following the prophecy around like a lost pup, she said as we walked. But here we are. I'd prefer just Alirae, I said dryly. She grinned. Name first, legend later. Got it. She led me through parts of Caelestis that didn't smell of politics. The kitchens, where steam billowed and cooks shouted over clattering pans, the air heavy with bread and herbs and roasted meat. The stables, where massive warhorses snorted and tossed their heads, their scents earthy and warm. A library wing, all dust and vellum and the faint, soothing tang of old ink. In the library, a narrow, stooped man with ink-stained fingers peered up at us from behind a stack of scrolls. The king's new storm, he said, eyes crinkling behind round lenses. Welcome, Omega. I blinked. His storm? You think you can carry a mark like that and not shake the weather? He said mildly. Name's Helvar. I keep the records. If you want to know what the seers used to say before the council started editing them, you come to me. Nissa snorted. He's not wrong. Council history is thinner than this man's hair. Helvar patted his balding head without offense. Truth is rarely convenient, he said. But the moon goddess seems fond of it. My pulse ticked up. You've read the old prophecies? About the stars and the crescent? Every version, he said. Including the ones that say nothing about destruction. He shuffled a few scrolls, then jabbed a finger at my bondmark. That mark of yours? Some texts call it the omen of ruin. Others call it the sign of remaking. Funny how the council only likes one title. Hope fluttered, small and startled, in my chest. Remaking? He eyed me. Depends what you and the king decide to do with it, doesn't it? Nissa cleared her throat pointedly. We should move on before you bury her in metaphors, Helvar. Metaphors are the kingdom's backbone. He called after us as we left. Remember that. Our next stop was the inner temple. Unlike the public courtyards below, this shrine to the moon goddess was simple, quiet, and intensely private. It was a round chamber open to the sky, its floor a mosaic of crescents and stars. No walls, only pillars holding up a ring of carved stone. In the center, a shallow pool reflected the pale daylight. A woman knelt at the water's edge, her silver robe pooling around her. Her hair was dark, streaked at the temples with white. A chain of tiny crescent charms circled her throat. Nissa, she said without looking back. You bring me trouble. Always, High Seer, Nissa said cheerfully. This is Alirae. The woman rose smoothly and turned. Her eyes were the soft gray of distant clouds, but they felt deep. Like she'd seen too much, and somehow still chosen to be gentle. I know who she is, the seer said. The stars have been restless since the night of her exile. She inclined her head to me. I am Soraya. I listen for what the moon goddess doesn't say outright. Does she ever speak plainly? I asked before I could stop myself. To my surprise, Soraya smiled. Rarely. She prefers stories to commands. Sit, Omega. I knelt across the pool from her. The water reflected both our faces, rippling when a stray breeze brushed its surface. Show me your mark, she said. I turned my head, letting my cloak fall. She sucked in a breath. In all my years, she murmured, reaching out but stopping just shy of touching my skin. I never thought I would see it outside of ink and legend. Everyone keeps saying that, I said. That they never thought, that this changes everything. But no one can tell me what that actually means for me. For the kingdom. For him. Soraya's gaze flicked up, following the invisible line that connected my words to the king. The prophecy you've been told, she said, is the council's favorite version. It is not the only one. Some old texts say the star crescent Omega will stand at the Alpha King's side when the blood moon rises. That much is constant. That she will be claimed by him, bond and mark, also constant. What changes is what happens after. Destruction, I said. Or unity. Or both, she said softly. Sometimes, to unite what is broken, something must be destroyed. Old law. Old cruelty. Old fear. The prophecy does not say the kingdom's people will burn. Only that the old order of bonds and power will not survive untouched. I thought of pack law carved in stone. Of rules that made Omega's property. Of the way the council had discussed my death like it was an administrative solution. What if I don't want that? I whispered. What if I don't want to be remade either? I just wanted. I don't know. A small life. Someone who loved me. A place to belong. Soraya's eyes softened further. The moon goddess often chooses those who never asked to be chosen, she said. But she does not erase your will. Prophecy is not a chain, Alirae. It is a road. You still decide whether you walk it or how. And if I refuse? I asked. If I run? Then she will likely find another way, Soraya said, with the frankness of someone who had no time for lies. But know this, there has never been another Omega like you in the texts. No second mark. No backup plan. She tilted her head. Running might not just change your fate. It might shatter the kingdoms. I stared into the pool. My reflection wavered, stars of my mark glittering faintly near the surface. Not much of a choice, I said. Not an easy one, Soraya agreed. But there is a difference. Easy choices rarely change anything worth changing. The wind stirred again. Above us, the slice of sky visible through the temple's open circle showed the faint outline of the moon, pale against blue. 3 days until it waxed into the sharp crescent the council feared. 3 days to decide if I was a storm, or simply a girl being swept up in one. I thought mates were supposed to be more than sacrifices. The corridor swallowed my words, soft but sharp as a blade. Dallow stiffened, his fingers curling at his sides as if he wished he had a better answer to give, one that didn't taste like regret. Alirae, please, he said, stepping toward me. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted this. Yet you did it anyway. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You didn't even hesitate. His eyes darkened. You don't understand what the elders were whispering. What they were planning. Your mark. My mark? I laughed, brittle. You once kissed that mark like it was holy. Now you call it poison. He flinched, but stubborn pride settled over his features a heartbeat later. I had no choice. If I claimed you, House Theron would lose every alliance we've built. The council would cut us out. My father's legacy. Your father's legacy died with him. I snapped. This was your decision. You chose power over me. Over everything we were. Silence widened between us like a wound. Then Dallows reached out, fingers trembling as they brushed my sleeve. I still care for you, he whispered. I still. Is this a problem? Caelan's voice rolled through the corridor like thunder wrapped in velvet. Dallows jerked back. My breath caught as the vampire Alpha King stepped into view, every inch of him carved from quiet authority. His silver eyes swept over the scene once, and in that brief moment, the air changed, charged, swirling, dangerous. Your Majesty, Dallows said, bowing stiffly. I meant no disrespect. I was only interfering, Caelan finished. Which is a generous word for a man who abandoned his Omega on the roadside like discarded parchment. Dallows flushed. I only wished to speak with her. She is under my protection, Caelan said, stepping closer, not touching me but placing himself unmistakably between us. And I did not grant you permission to approach her. A low growl threaded Dallows' voice. With respect, Your Majesty, she is still of my house. No, Caelan said, voice dropping into something cold enough to silence stone. She is of no house. Because you cast her out. He took another step forward, close enough that Dallows had to lift his chin to meet the king's gaze. If you attempt to manipulate her again, Caelan continued, each word razor-sharp, I will personally see to it your house loses every privilege it hides behind. And the council will not protect you. Dallows paled. Yes, my king. Leave. Dallows hesitated only a heartbeat, long enough for his eyes to flick toward me, full of things he didn't deserve to say, before he turned and walked away, boots hitting stone with the rhythm of retreat. When he was gone, Caelan exhaled slowly, the tension loosening its grip around the corridor. Are you harmed? He asked softly. No, I said. Just tired. Of being something people argue over. His gaze softened. You are not a piece on their board, Alirae. And I will not let anyone treat you as such. My breath hitched. The king extended a hand, not to claim, not to command, but simply to offer. Walk with me, he said. Let me show you the parts of this castle that belong to you as much as to any crown. And for the first time since the night everything shattered, I reached out and let someone steady me. Night settled over Caelestis like a velvet curtain, the rising crescent moon hanging thin and sharp above the citadel. Caelan led me toward the highest terrace, an open platform of black stone where the wind tasted of stars. The city glittered far below, lanterns shimmering like fallen constellations trapped on earth. "This is where every king stands," he murmured beside me, "when he must decide what kind of man he will become." I turned toward him. "And what do you choose tonight?" His silver eyes caught the moonlight, turning them bright and fierce. "I choose not to fear destiny," he said. "And I choose not to let you face yours alone." My breast shook. "Even if the prophecy destroys everything?" "Then let it destroy the old," he said softly. "Not you. And not us." Wind swept my hair around us. My bondmark glowed, soft at first, then bright enough to kiss his jaw with starlight. He lifted a hand, but didn't touch, waiting. This time, I bridged the distance. Our fingers intertwined. The crescent moon above flared, and for one suspended moment, it felt like the kingdom exhaled, like fate, after so long hunting us, finally chose a gentler path. Whatever came next, we would meet it standing together. Thank you so much for listening to Rejected and Forgotten, until the Vampire King chose me beneath the falling stars. If you enjoyed this Alpha King and Omega Vampire world, full of prophecy, forbidden bonds, and slow-burn destiny, make sure to stay close, because there are many more stories coming: rival alphas, cursed heirs, blood moon ceremonies, and new omegas standing before impossible thrones. Sleep well under the moon goddess's light. And get ready for the next tale.